Welcome to Unit 2, Mod 5. Unit 2, Mod 5, we're going to spend the next couple of modules talking about family stress theory. For this module, you should have read the BOSS chapter in the Mod 5 folder. It's kind of an introduction to stress theory and specifically the ABCX model that we're going to look at today. So let's jump into it. We will be discussing, as I said, family stress theory. Today, this is the first part. We're going to look at 3 different models of family stress over the next 2 modules. These models of family stress kind of build upon each other. So there will be some introductory language, and then as we move into the more complex models, we won't repeat all of that again. But this is the model that should look familiar to you from the chapter that you just read, the ABCX model of family crisis. Dr. Hill created this model in the 50s to show how social stress work upon the families and what that might look at. So let's break it down and piece by piece and just kind of define what we're looking at in this model. And then at the end for your journal today, you'll have some practical application of this model. You'll get to use this model with a specific family. So in the ABCX, we start with the A. A is going to include stressors and hardships. And so when we think about stressor events, these are any event that provokes some kind of change in the system, the family system. That change could be boundaries, it could be structural, it could be a change in goals, a change in process, a change in value, whatever that system values, roles and how those roles are filled within that system. Stressor events can be negative or positive. We've talked about this in some other courses, but just think in your mind what an example of a positive event that could be a stressor event might be. What comes to my mind is thinking about things like the first day of school or a wedding or having a new child, all positive events, but carry with it some stress, right? So a stressor event may be negative or positive. A stressor event may be normal or it may be non-normative. It may be predictable or it may be unpredictable, right? Stressor events that are normal. We might expect that older family members are going to pass away at some point in time, right? The older our family members are, the more likely we would expect their passing, right? But a non-normative or unpredictable type of stressor could be the death of a child, right? Death of an infant, even a miscarriage, things like that that are unpredictable, right? And so stressors can be either normative or non-normative as well. Now, family hardships are the demands that families experience that are specifically associated with the stressor event. Demands that the family experience that are specifically associated with the stressor event. So you might think about a positive stressor event like a wedding. What are some family hardships? What are some demands that are experienced specifically associated with that stressor event? Well, there's lots of things to get organized, right? It costs money. There's lots of people involved and other systems. The family has to interact with other systems. And so there's a lot of demand there on a family. Hill in 1958 listed these as general sources of A. These are in general what we might how Hill might define the source of stress: accession, dismemberment, loss of family morale and unity, change to structure and morale. And so those four sources are really the underpinning of the A for Hill. As this was fleshed out further, Lippmann and Blumen in 1975 put stressor events in more of a typology, looking at spectrums of type. So could be internality versus externality, an internal stress versus an external stress, pervasiveness versus boundaries, a precipitate onset just happens versus a gradual onset. We're building towards that stress. Intensity, very intense types of stress versus mildness. There's kind of maybe even hum in the background type of stress. Transitoriness versus chronicity. Is it more acute? Does it happen? Is it a stressor event that's just kind of random and happening, or is it something that's chronic and happening over and over and over again? Randomness versus expectability. How random is it? How much do we expect it to happen? Is it naturally generating stress, or is it artificially generated? Does it deal with scarcity of resource or surplus? What's the perceived solvability? Is this something that we can tackle, or is this something that we perceive we can't tackle? And what's the content? Is this a political stress, economic stress, moral, etc.? What kind of stress is this? So there's different types of stressor events that we might think of when we look at A in the event or situation, the ABCX model. Okay, so what's the B? The B is the family's crisis meeting resources, or put a different way, the family's capacity for addressing the stressors and hardships. So what do individual family members bring to the table? Their own financial situation, their education, their health, their own psychological state, their mental health. They're bringing a certain capacity to and skills even to addressing whatever the stressor is. And then the family system as a whole is also bringing in resource. It has capacity for addressing stressor. Things like adaptability. How flexible is the family, rolling with the punches and moving on? Cohesion. How close-knit is the family? Are they disengaged from each other, or are they overly enmeshed with each other? Because that's going to help determine how they meet that stressor head on. And then also there's also the community that plays into this capacity for addressing stressors and hardships. These resources that that families can currently tap into for emotional, network, esteem types of support, resources that might be more external to them. So B is all about the family's capacity for addressing the stressors. What resources, both internal and external, are they bringing to the table? So we've got the event or the situation as A, we've got a resource B, and then we have the perception as C. What we mean by perception is the family's definition of the situation. This is a family's subjective perception of the stressor and the accompanying hardships. How does the family system perceive this stressor event to be? Is it negative? Is it positive? Is it internal? Is it external? Is it solvable? Is it not solvable? How do we perceive this stressor? And really, the the way the family defines the situation is really a reflection of what that particular family system values and what they have probably learned from previous stressor experiences. So maybe we had a similar stressor event in my childhood, and we learned something from that. And so when my family of procreation hits that similar stressor event, we perceive it maybe in a different way than my family of orientation did. So we have A, the event or situation, B, the resources, and C, the perception. And if you look, you can see the lines connecting all of those three variables. And that's very important because they're all interconnected. The stressor event isn't happening in isolation. There is a degree or capacity to which families can deal with that event, and there is perception of that event, and they all are influencing each other. At the same time, they are influencing the X, which we might call the degree of stress or family crisis. And here's what we need to understand about this. When we think about the degree of stress, we're thinking about the degree of disruption or disorganization that a system is going to experience when they deal with the demands of a stressor event and they exceed the capability that that family has to deal with the stressor event. When this happens, family systems can be blocked, immobilized, even incapacitated because the disturbance is overwhelming or because they have the severe pressure mounting to not end up falling apart or because acute changes, small changes, have big ramifications, right? But we have to understand when we look at the model, the difference of family stress versus crisis. Remember, the degree of stress is a state of disturbed equilibrium, meaning it's a continuous variable, right? Because families are continually stressed. It's common. It's normal. Remember that from day one. We talked about the idea of stress or trauma or crisis being something that's a norm. All family systems are going to deal with that. And so the question is just to what degree are family systems dealing with that at the moment? Family crisis is a dichotomous variable. That means the family is either in crisis or it isn't crisis. Now, we have to understand that family stress does not necessarily mean that there will be family crisis. And family crisis does not necessarily mean that there will be a permanent end to the family system. So when you look at that X, you see degree of stress, and then you see a crack and you see crisis. And according to this model, we're very much saying that family stress, we get to that X, right? The A, the B, and the C, the situation, the resources, the perception are all influencing, impacting each other, and impacting the degree to which that family is stressed. But that doesn't necessarily mean that even if there's a high stress level, that the family is going to end up in crisis. It could, but it doesn't necessarily mean it. Also, just because that X might be crisis doesn't mean that that family system is going to come to a complete halt. It's going to take some work on that family system's part to adapt and change, but it doesn't mean that that system has to permanently end. In the next module, we're going to talk more about how the family stress model was fleshed out over the years, and we'll get into a couple other models, the double ABCX and the FAR model, that will kind of help explain this idea of families and stress a little more. So go in to your Mod 5 journal. You're going to be watching a clip from the television show Parenthood, and you're going to be applying the ABCX model to that particular family system in what you see. And I will see you back here for Mod 6.